Welcome everyone, and my name is Georgina Pazcoguin. I'm the co-founder of Final Boss for Yellowface, and this is What's the Tea? A daily conversation with a dancer of Asian descent for the duration of May to celebrate Asian Pacific Heritage Month. These discussions, we want to highlight the achievements and experiences of Asians in dance, and today I have Alex Wong, and I'm very excited that he's here. Alex, do you want to take a second to call out the charity you would love to raise funds for in case there's some crazy rich Asians out there?
Yeah, Actors Fund.
Excellent. So just jumping right in, this has hit the Broadway community really hard too, not only the dance community, and you and I have a shared sort of connection to that world. So how are you doing? What's going on? What are you missing right now?
I'm doing okay. There's up and down. So the past few days I've been a little bit of a deadbeat, but up until the past few days I've been doing pretty good. It was really, really busy for me from pretty much like September until the shutdown. So the first month was actually pretty nice because I was like really stressed out. Like I was flying back and forth between LA and New York. And then like I was working like 6-day work weeks. No, they were 7-day work weeks, but they were 6-day rehearsal work weeks. And then I would like finish rehearsal Saturday night, drive to LAX, hop on a red-eye flight to go over to the West Coast, land Sunday morning, teach, and then fly back Sunday night. And like, it was like that for like months. So I was like pretty happy that like I had a little bit of a break, and like, it was not bad because I had like no FOMO. So like, it was just like, great, chill. But I think I'm ready to kind of like start back things again. I obviously miss traveling for work and things like that. Luckily, some social media campaigns and things like that are still going on. So I'm not totally without work, but in terms of like physical work where I'm like actually using my body to work and stuff like that, which is what I do most often, obviously none of that's happening.
Yeah, you want a chance to like rev the engine. We spend so much time like honing our instrument. It's a shame to only be able to like do a bar in a kitchen every once in
Oh
a
my gosh, it's
while.
tough. It's tough. I barely have space to do a bar. Like there is no place in my apartment where I have enough room to do a front, side, back. Like I have to shift no matter like yeah.
Yes, I hear you on that. Well, speaking of training, can you let the viewers know like what made you start dancing?
Okay, so I started dance when I was 7, but I would probably, I guess when I was like 5 or so, I would start dancing around, and I would like bring my family into like the bedroom, and I'd turn off all the lights, I'd give my dad a flashlight, and I'd say like spotlight me. And I would do these like, I don't know who knows what dances. I'm sure they were hideous. But my parents saw this love of dance in me, and they were like, do you want to dance? And I was like, nah, dancing's only for girls. And so I kept on doing that, but then I also kept on saying dancing's only for girls for like 2 years. And then my dad was doing some local photography for like a local dance school, and he was like, they're like, why don't we bring you to this dance performance, and if you don't want to dance after that, we won't ask you anymore. So I was like, sure. So I went, and I think I must have seen some guys on stage, and I like loved it, and I wanted to start like the very next day. So that's kind of how I got started. I started with like jazz and tap first,
Mhm.
and then like I guess 3 years in, my teacher was like, if you want to get serious in dancing, you have to start taking ballet. And she actually sent me to another school,
Oh,
which
wow.
is like insane. Like I mean, like I mean, at like any dance school or whatever, it's a business, right? So
Mhm.
to potentially lose your student because for the better of them, because they didn't really offer like that much ballet at the school I was going to. It was mostly like jazz, tap, whatever. But she was like, you have to take ballet, and you can only go to this one school that was like an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half away from where I lived. So that was a big commitment, and I hated ballet at first. For the first 2 or 3 years, I hated it like with passion. I remember I would like sometimes show up with my dance clothes underneath, and I'd be like, forgot my clothes, and I just sit and watch class. And like, oh my gosh, like had my mom found out, because like she would drive me like an hour and a half to go to these ballet practices, and I'm just like sitting in the room like I can't stand to take another class, but I knew it was good for me. Like it wasn't like anyone was forcing me to do them. I was forcing myself, but sometimes I just couldn't swallow it. Like, and I did see improvement in my other forms of dance like so much that I knew it was good for me. But anyway, eventually I liked ballet, but it took like 3 years.
I mean, that makes total sense. I mean, like, you're obviously, like, you were a boy, and a boy with so much energy. The last thing you want to do is be in a dance class where you're like forced to
Oh my
like
gosh.
learn combinations and be calm, and like you just want to have an adventure.
It
No
was
wonder.
driving me nuts. Like I was standing in the bar and like my teacher was like, shoulder, shoulder, like, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just want to move. And then like, I'm like, I like go home and I'm like, everyone's doing like the same thing. Like, why is she only correcting me? Like, you know, and like later on, of course, you realize that like, you know, you want those corrections and it's like, you know what I mean? But I'm like, oh my gosh, everyone looks like this. And then like, I remember like, I do have a video of like, you know, when they used to do like parent dance classes, not like
Uh-huh.
the parents will come to watch. And I'm
Mhm.
literally like in the back, like, just like I'm like everyone's like doing and I'm like in the back like doing my own thing, and I'm like, oh gosh, my poor teacher.
Oh my God, I love that. Oh, so then fast forwarding a little bit, what was there a specific moment where you're like, I could do this. I can actually be a professional dancer and I want it.
I think probably like at like 13, I was like, oh, I think I'm probably going towards that direction. Like it was like I was taking it seriously. I was training like multiple hours a day, and it just seemed like it was like something I was gonna do, but I wasn't sure what I was gonna do with it. So it was like, oh, because you know at that age you also don't really know what options there are, and like I was training in Canada. I'm born in Canada, and so like there aren't that many opportunities there. So I was just like, I don't know. Probably at 15 was when I was at a crossroad where I was like, okay, this is real. I'm going to pursue dance, but what do I do? Because up until then, I had been training equally in all my dance styles, like jazz, tap, contemporary, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and ballet. So two sides of it. And I didn't feel at that time, I didn't see like any Asians on TV. I didn't see any Asians like really represented anywhere. It didn't feel like I could actually book anything in the commercial side of dance. I was like, okay, like let's say I try to do Broadway, like West Side Story, like there's no Asians, like there's no, how am I gonna book anything? Like I don't see Asians in music videos, I don't see Asians in whatever. And then I was like on the flip side with ballet, it's a little bit more colorblind. And I felt like at that time, like, okay, because commercial work is like a gigging job, I was like, I don't know if I could put food on the table with that being Asian. And so I at 15, I kind of made a conscious decision where I was like, okay, I'm gonna pursue the ballet route. I feel more comfortable. I feel like I can get into a company. I feel like I can get steady work. And like I never really felt like as an Asian would prevent me from getting into a company. It was more about height and stuff like that. So, but even with my height, I was confident that I could get into some sort of ballet company. So that was the direction I chose. So at 15, I kind of made that decision where like, where I was like, okay, I'm going to focus more on ballet because it's more colorblind and that's more safe. So that's kind of what I did,
Mm-hmm.
which is what brought me to the ballet route initially.
Great. So now can you tell us what your ethnic and cultural heritage is, and to what degree do you feel connected to it?
So I am 100% Chinese, as far as I know. My parents are born in Hong Kong, and I'm born in Canada. I was born in Edmonton and grew up in the greater Vancouver area. I would say well, I don't know. Everyone kind of has different degrees of what they consider connected. I would say I'm very connected. My first language was technically Cantonese. I learned it before I learned English. I don't think I learned English till I went to like preschool. So like my parents both have university degrees in Canada. So they both speak fluent English, but they knew that my brother and I would learn English, you know, at some point. And so it was a rule in the house that we would speak Chinese only up until probably until we were like teenagers.
Wow.
Now my Chinese is kind of rusty because it's out of practice, but it was our main language. And we did travel back to Hong Kong, I think when I was 10 for the first time. And also like, I was really lucky with my parents in the sense that, so we grew up in a small town. My brother and I were the only, I guess, full Asians in our school. And there was another pair of sisters that were half Asians, also Wong, same last name. And the funny thing, it was like, so the older sister was in my brother's grade and the younger sister was in my grade. I remember it was like,
A teacher's nightmare.
we're always the top. No, we're always the top of the class. So like, it was like my brother and this other sister would like fight for the academic award every year. And well, actually, the younger sister was never a contender. I got it every year. So, so I was like, I have it. Don't worry.
Sit down, lady. Sit down.
Yeah. My parents were really, really good with making us feel that being like Chinese and being Asian was really, really cool and a really like big advantage for us. So I never felt like different in the sense that like I want to be like everyone else. I actually always felt like I had one leg up. We were always traveling to like Chinese malls. I would have like the Tamagotchis. I would have like the latest, like, I don't know, just like, I just felt like I had an extra culture that I got to experience that other people didn't. And I felt like really cool about it. And I think growing up, it really helped me like not be ashamed and not feel like I had any sort of identity crisis. I feel like I always knew my roots and I always knew where I was and I wanted to share that with everyone. And so I felt really grateful for that because I know a lot of people growing up feel like they want to fit in and, like being of like a different color, especially like I was in such a small town where I was literally the only Asian, like didn't see any at all. It didn't make me feel weird.
Wow, I love that. That's so heartening to hear, like that you had such a wonderful, like supportive network around you that
Yeah.
had you embrace your culture. And speaking, I wanted to share who you are. Like, does your ethnic and cultural heritage now inform your work as an artist?
I wouldn't say it informs my work. I would say it does dictate some of the work I do because now I work mostly in the commercial industry. And
Mm-hmm.
I know that, so, after doing ballet for multiple years in a company and I eventually started seeing more Asians on TV, I felt like I could take that jump into the commercial industry. And I know that, there's always a token Asian. Okay. So in, in every job or whatever, generally there's always a token Asian. If they're looking for a technical Asian, I know I'm somewhere on the top of that list. Okay. So I don't think it really changes like how I dance or anything, but I think it helps me, as long as I am within amongst the Asians that they would like to book, I think it helps me separate me in my own category.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it does help me with that. And I feel like I'm unique in that way. And there are like unique jobs for me. I wouldn't say it changes like how I dance or anything. But yeah, if that
No,
makes sense, I don't know.
you answered it perfectly. So you have such a wonderful dual perspective. You spent some time in the ballet world and you're in the commercial world. I'm going to ask you to answer this question regarding both. How do you think, first of all, how do you think the ballet world is doing in terms of race and representation? And now, since you feel like it's improved, how do you think the commercial world is doing?
Okay, so for the ballet world, I think it's tough. Okay, because as you and I both know, in the ballet world, it has so much to do with facility.
Mm-hmm.
So what your natural born facility is. So regardless of white, yellow, black, blah, 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 first you kind of have to pass this body facility test, right? And so I think that it's not so much to do with color, but it's more to do with body shape and feet. You know what I mean? Like it's like how many people's careers have just never taken off because they have bad feet? Like, and you can have you can be like the most beautiful dancer and then you have terrible feet and like you can't get anywhere in terms of ballet because it's like so unforgiving. We both know ballet is just so unforgiving. It's like there's this idea of classical perfection. There's an idea. It's the only dance form where there's an idea of what could be perfect, and it's like never really achieved. And so I do think it's actually less to do with race and more to do with body type. So it is a tough thing because I would like to think that directors aren't looking at race really as a thing. You know, I certainly don't. But I think that body type is for sure a thing, and it's probably something that classical ballet will never really be able to step away from because it's so ingrained in what classical ballet is. In terms of the commercial industry, I definitely think that it is taking steps forward. I think in film and TV, we are seeing more and more Asians in things. We are seeing perhaps not one token Asian, maybe two, maybe three. I shot a MasterCard commercial earlier this year in January, and there were like, okay, so there was probably like 12 principals and like 5 of us were Asian. And we looked at each other and we were like, guys, Asian represent. We're so heavy on the Asian right now. Like we were so happy about it. And then in the final cut, like a bunch of us had made the final cut being Asian. We were like, okay, like watch, they just cut everyone out and there's just the token Asian in the final cut. No, like in the opening shot, it was 2 Asian girls together, you know, whatever. And like I got in the shot, whatever. And it was like, I was like, wow, okay, this Asian representation in this commercial is very good, which I was very pleased about. So like, as I was talking about before, having that one token Asian, now sometimes we're seeing a few more, which I think is really great. It's not like, oh, okay, like we have one Asian, that's enough. Now I see that, you know, there can be a few more. And, you know, like with film and TV, Crazy Rich Asians, even like with Parasite winning the Oscars and things like that, I think it just, the more people see and the more it's normalized, the more casting can feel like, oh, this doesn't necessarily have to be a white role or a black role or whatever. It can be divvied up into however, you know, the landscape is where the movie is shot, you know. So for instance, like if a movie is based in New York City or in LA, we both know that it's very multicultural, right? So I think it is starting to kind of reflect that, which is great.
Thank you. You answered those perfectly and so succinctly. The next question, it might be, you absolutely don't have to answer it if you don't feel that you've never experienced it, but do you have any instances where you felt discriminated against that you would like to share? Either in the ballet world, in life, in the commercial world? Has it been like an instance where you're like, hold on, time out. That's making me feel uncomfortable.
Probably not for me personally, just because I don't really take things offensively. And I think that often when people say like maybe like offensive things, they don't actually necessarily mean it offensively. So I think there's a big difference, you know what I mean? Like I've been called chinky several times, but I know that the people that have said it to me doesn't come from a bad place, you know what I mean? And sure, it may be wrong, but it didn't really bother me. So like I think also like throughout my years and things like that, I don't really take things to heart that often, like bad things to heart. I kind of like take them and I just peel it back, and sometimes it's a criticism, right? And I look at the criticism and I go, oh, okay, so I can improve upon that. Great, like no big deal. I just move forward, right? So I wouldn't say there's something that really particularly stands out to me. I would say I've had it pretty good, but that could also just be the way I react to things.
Yeah, it's your experience, and you obviously have a very wonderful demeanor about you. But I am going to apologize because like no one should call you chinky. That is certainly not appropriate. You mentioned your dance teacher sent you to a totally different school that was like an hour and a half away. Did you say that? And like, so how did your parents feel about all this? Were they like they're scholars? Did they want you to, did they see you going into this professional creative career? Were they supportive?
So yeah, having Asian American parents, I think it's like the typical thing where like everyone is like, you got to be a doctor, you got to do well in school, you're playing piano. Yes, I did play piano, but I school was emphasized. I had to get good grades, which I did. I
Which you
liked
did.
school anyway, so it was fine. But yeah, it was always a rule. It was like you have to do well in school. If you break a leg, you got to go to school. So these like up until like high school or whatever, you have to get good grades. And I think it was like a constant probably discussion between my mom and my dad. You know, is he going to pursue dance? Is this actually possible? Should he go to college? And then I think they probably realized that, you know, for a ballet career, like it's probably not the best idea to go to college. You got to go into a company right away. And, you know, doing international competitions and then going into a company, like you're getting a contract, like later on, you might not get that, right? So they were very supportive. I think that they definitely saw the talent and the love that I had for dance, and I think that was the most important thing. They always pushed both my brother and I to pursue our passions, and less about pursuing like a financially stable career. I do understand why many other Asian American parents want that for their children, just because they came from something that wasn't so stable, and in their mind what happiness was something financially stable. Like it wasn't difficult to come to America, you know, and a lot of them are our grandparents have gone through like a war and things like that. And so whereas like when your basic needs are met, then you start dreaming and you start having these passions, which is, you know, the situation that I grew up in, you know. And so I think my parents saw that, and they both realized that once these financial or basic needs are met. But even sometimes, like I remember them asking me like, you know, as a dancer, you probably won't make the most money, you might not, or whatever. Are you okay with maybe not having like the nicest things, whatever, but pursuing your passion? And I was like, yeah, like this is what I want to do. And I think as dancers, we nobody really goes into dance thinking that they're going to make a ton of money, right? So it's
Absolutely
like
no one does.
yeah, it's absolutely no one does. It's a passion, and you know that you would rather do it than anything else. And so my parents recognized that, and they were very, very supportive with my passions. They never really pushed me like in the sense that like you have to go to this school, you have to whatever. But they said like if this is your choice, then you know you must dedicate yourself to this, and do your best. And so yeah, they were really, really supportive.
Lovely. So the next question I have is like, so imagine like, regardless of whether or not you want to have children, but say you have a child and they want to follow in your footsteps and they want to become dancers and have a career in dance, what would you say to him or her as sort of advice?
I think that there's a lot of varying factors in this question because it's like, do they want to pursue ballet? Do they want to pursue commercial dance? If it's ballet, I would look at their facility, like we talked about, and see how realistic it is, and you know their innate talent. But I guess most of all, their passion and love for it. So if it's like kind of like they're only sort of passionate, I would say like, hey, maybe don't do it. Okay. Um, and and even if they were really passionate, I would make sure that they do really well in school because, you know, as we both know, the dance career is not so long, and a lot of the times you're going to mix things that you learned with everything else, like kind of going forward, right? Or even after dance. But if they were really, really passionate, and this was something that they really, really wanted to do, I would just say, yeah, go for it, do it. I think dream big, and like if you really commit yourself to that dream, something will happen. Like it's not necessarily that you'll get there, but you'll get somewhere. And I think that pursue it until it doesn't make you happy anymore.
Right.
I think people that should be able to pursue their dreams, and because like this is one of the biggest things and how I make decisions is regret. And it's like, I ask myself, if I don't do this, am I going to regret it in the future? And if the answer is yes, then I definitely go and do it, right? So like that would be a question that I ask them. It would be like, if you don't pursue dance, is this something you're going to regret in the future? Because it's like, what's the point of having, even if they're not talented, you know, what's the point of having them pursue something that they don't even like and they regret it for the rest of their life? Like, you're not going to have someone that's emotionally happy, like in a good place. I think like if you pursue it and it doesn't work, you know that you tried, and then you can move on happily, right? So I think that is something that is so important.
Right. Lovely. So this is also an interesting question because you have like you moved on to from the ballet world, but I think it also applies to Broadway, which generally has a more inclusive audience just because of the what's put on stage. But what do you think is needed to keep this going, to help build like a loyal and younger like patronage for dance? I mean, like like what are your thoughts on that offhand?
For dance or for ballet?
I think for dance, because like you can choose from, just feed in. I mean, if you want to answer for both specifically, you're more than welcome to.
I think, okay, so I think ballet specifically, I hate to say that it's a dying art, but it sort of is. Like, it's getting less popular. I think ballet companies are finding it difficult to fill the seats, and the seats that are filled are a lot of like older people, okay? I think it is hard because, especially with this day and age, everything is so instant, and ballet is something that really needs to like simmer. So like when you watch ballet, like you're like simmering, it's like classical music, it's like relaxing. And even like the finesse of a dancer, like it's something that needs to like simmer and like, you know what I mean? I think to attract a younger audience to that, I think companies really need to build out their social media skills and not have it so inaccessible. I think that like, I think that opening up company classes and opening up rehearsals and things like that so people get to see the process. I think that the more that people can understand the difficulty and the process, the more people can be drawn into it, and like then eventually be like, like I've been watching them for so long, like I want to go see them live. You know what I mean? I think so much of like ballet in the past has been this like inaccessible thing that you just see from far away, and it's beautiful, and that's all you get to see. You don't get to see like the dancers like rehearsing, and you don't get to know the dancers. And I think, like, for instance, with reality TV, with reality TV dance shows such as like So You Think You Can Dance, Dancing with the Stars, whatever, you get to know the contestants, and it takes you on a journey so that you have an investment, an emotional investment in these dancers, and that's why you want to see them through. And I think that ballet companies have to do a similar sort of thing if they want to continue thriving in this younger world where everything is so instant, but also everything can be so connected on a personal level, whereas I feel like that's what's missing from the ballet world. In terms of dance, drawing in a younger audience, I think that dance in general does have a young audience. I mean, if you even look at like TikTok and things like that, there's like tons of, you know, I mean, TikTok is a Gen Z app, you know what I mean? There's so many young kids on it, and they're all doing, you know, their TikTok dances, and whatever that may happen to be. Most of these are more like street style dances and not so much ballet anymore, right? So I think as we go through generations of dance, some dances, some types of dance get more popular amongst younger generations, and some types of dance get popular amongst older generations. And so I think that's just what we're seeing. Obviously, these days, the kids love flashy tricks and things like that, as you see on World of Dance, where, you know, it's like tons of tricks and like flashy things, and that's what generally the audience loves in shows like that. And I know a lot of people kind of complain about it, but I think there's a place for both. I mean, I think some of the reasons why people enjoy watching women's floor gymnastics so much is because there's a musical element to it, and there's a music dance element as well as tumbling. And I think
There's a
World of
choreographic
Dance, and
element to those
it's a
routines too.
choreographic element, yeah. And World of Dance, I know a lot of people say it's kind of like gymnastics, which it is kind of like gymnastics, but they are dancers doing gymnastics in a musical way with choreography woven into it. And if that's kind of where some parts of dance go, I guess it's fine. You know what I mean? I think there's a spot for that type of dancing. There's a spot for ballet. There's a spot for TikTok dances. There's a spot for street dances. There's a spot for commercial dances. You know, I think it kind of all just lives together. And definitely the younger audience kind of leans towards enjoying those types a little bit more at the moment. So I don't think that dance is dying in any sense that doesn't have a young audience. I think particular styles of dance are struggling with that, but I don't think all types are.
Right. I think you did a great job of saying that there's got to be a spectrum. Like it doesn't all have to be TikTok oriented based. But we also, like, for instance, I perform and work in a theater that has 0 windows. It shouldn't have to be like that. And it was designed specifically for that reason.
Right.
So that, Balanchine designed that with Philip Johnson. I hope I got that architect right. But so that his dancers wouldn't be distracted. And that's and in doing that, he closed off an entire world that might walk by and see. I love the ALA studios and how when they redid Juilliard, they left all the spaces open so the passersby can look and sit and watch and feel included in all that. So you really touched on
I think you sort of have to make the company dancers like celebrities, and people get to see their work. I think it's so important.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Alex, for doing this. Your perspective is
thanks for having me.
It's really interesting and wonderful. And thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to check out the Instagram page right now for the reveal of who the next Dancer Chat will be, and tune in tomorrow at noon Eastern Standard Time for the next conversation.